Happy Thursday. This is the Auburn Daily Show. Zac Blackerby, Lance Dawe. Looking at yesterday, an extremely exciting day for the Tigers, and not for the reasons you may think on National Signing Day. Sure, the 2023 class, you got to put a bow on it by officially putting Jeremiah Cobb's name, ink to paper, and sealing off, what's an incredibly talented running back that could have an instant impact this upcoming season, Lance. But you bring in some dudes. Malik Autry, 2025 commit, the first member of the 2025 class. You also bring in Jayden Lewis, a commitment for Jayden Lewis, the 4-star corner in the 2024 class from Anniston, Alabama. And there's a lot to like about both of these kids, Lance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday was a really good day for Auburn overall, not just for football, but for basketball as well, with 4-star guard Tahad Pettiford also committing. Auburn got a massive win over Georgia. I mean, it was just a good day for Auburn overall. But you look at these recruits that Auburn's bringing in, Zach. I mean, Jeremiah Cobb, to start with him. I mean, Kerryon Johnson, you saw him on Twitter extremely high on this kid, saying, welcome to the next, welcome to running back you, essentially. Welcome to being next in line there. Big shoes to fill. I think with Cobb coming in now that Tank Bigsby is gone, and we don't know what Jarquez Hunter's going to do this season, but I can only imagine only good things will come from that backfield there. But yeah, Malik Autry and Jayden Lewis, two really, really big, high-profile guys. Jayden Lewis being somebody that I think Auburn's got to be really excited about, considering where he falls in this cycle with this defensive back room being so stacked this year, so full of experience. You can only imagine that Auburn's going to need maybe a little bit more help in that depth and that rotation there next year. And Jayden Lewis, you really like what you see on him, or on his film when it comes to his speed, and then just overall what he's able to bring to the table for Wesley McGriff & Co. And yeah, I'm thrilled about these two guys, Zach. And when you look at it overall, you've got to be excited about what Hugh Freeze is doing moving forward. You and I got a chance to speak with him at the Senior Bowl here down in Mobile, and one of the things that he noted was that he's not going to really be able to tell whether this team's going to take off until these 2024 and 2025 classes start going. Now we've gotten to see a commit from both of those classes, and, there's only 3 teams in the SEC that have a kid for the 2025 class, so Auburn establishing things early, I think, is very exciting to see, Zach.
Yeah, and just obviously the importance and priority that they're putting on these two classes, which makes a lot of sense, and a lot of people are definitely going to focus on the 24 class now that National Signing Day is behind us. But looking at Auburn's 24 class now, Jayden Lewis and Amon Lane, 2 in-state corners, both 4 stars according to 247, and most of the recruiting outlets have both of those guys 4 stars across the board. And Zach Etheridge continues to just be incredible at every single step of the way. So that's exciting. But look, Lance, talking to folks, the 2025 kid, Malik Autry, you get him out of your backyard, which we've said time and time again. We see too many kids from Opelika, from Auburn High School, from Central Phoenix City, and from Montgomery. You see so many of these guys, too many of these guys, either go to Alabama or leave the state. And the fact that, all right, one of the first guys that Hugh Freeze gets in a future class is right in their backyard, I think that's huge. I was talking to Auburn message board legend Charlie 5 on my show earlier this week, Locked on Auburn. And it just sounds like whenever Hugh Freeze gets a few minutes, like he's just kind of driving over to Central Phoenix City, the 45-minute drive away, just to kind of check in and see how things are going there, because it's that important. I mean, that place is a factory, and Auburn's had terrible luck there. And so, I mean, if Hugh Freeze can just reverse that and win the backyard consistently in those 3 schools, that's going to be huge. And so I think Malik Autry was kind of the first wave of all of that. And this is a dude, like he's about to be a junior. Like he's still a sophomore, and he's like 6'6", 285. Like, are you kidding me? He's playing edge right now, but at that size, if he keeps building out that 6'6" frame, he'll probably be a 3 technique or a nose guard, but still, I'll take that every single day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, he's playing edge right now. It'll be interesting to see what he does for the Tigers moving forward. But yeah, you talk about Hugh Freeze building up this class moving forward, specifically with the guys that are in state. I think it's a stark contrast to what we saw under the previous regime with Brian Harston and co., just kind of establishing things on the recruiting trail outside of the state earlier, at least attempting to. Didn't get a whole lot of success in state during their time here. And for Hugh Freeze to immediately flip the script and to acknowledge the fact that, no, we need to be getting these guys at home right now, I think is great. And moving forward, I would expect this to be the kind of the standard, Zach. I mean, I know a lot of people are shocked and excited that, Auburn's getting really high-profile recruits from their own backyard, but people shouldn't be taking players from our own backyard. I mean, it's a reason why it's called home for a reason. And you get a guy like Malik Autry, and you would expect, I think, for Auburn to consistently get more guys like this as Hugh Freeze's tenure goes on. I'm not expecting this to just be a one and done thing. Malik Autry is not going to be just a lone player out of the area here that Auburn ends up getting. And you have to be excited about what he brings to the table. Like you mentioned, at 6'6", 280, he's probably going to shift a little bit more inside. Zach, when you look at a guy like Malik Autry, who does he remind you of? Not just physically, but just overall what he could be for the Tigers.
That's so tough because he's just so young. He's got so much football left in him.
Sure.
But I mean, you think of anybody that really is solid at penetrating, that B gap, between the guard and the tackle. I think that's kind of what I'm going to see him at the next level. I don't know if you're going to see him necessarily do that as much at Opelika, just because it's obviously a different game and everything doesn't translate. But I don't know, maybe some Mon Adams, possibly. If we want to kind of want to be more, down the Auburn lane of things. If you want to throw out like a Mon Adams, I would take that again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking there. Somebody like Montravius Adams to kind of be that guy somewhat in the middle of your defense. I'm just curious to see what this physical development looks like. Because as of right now, I think we can all agree, I mean, at 6'6", 280, you could probably put him in a lot of different spots, but you were expecting him to kind of build out a little bit more. I'm curious to see where he ends up coming into his freshman season, how much the Tigers end up utilizing him, where they slot him, how versatile he ends up being. I'm excited about this kid.
Yeah, and how do they ask him to develop? And how does he just naturally – I mean, because 6'6", 280, I mean, you can still be 6'6", 280 a few years from now and look totally different, right? As far as, just filling out with muscle mass. And, I mean, it's just how does he want to develop his body? Or he could be 6'6", 305, when it's all said and done. So it just kind of depends. And obviously that's going to probably depend on what position he wants to play, what position the coaching staff wants him to play. I bet, though, Lance – I bet Hugh Freeze and this staff are just like, you do you. We'll figure out what you are when you get here. Because any of those are going to be fine. I mean, you'll take 6'6" in that first step any day of the week, like we were saying just a second ago. So very, very exciting stuff there. And then let's spend just a second talking about Jayden Lewis, 6 foot, 175, but it can be a physical player. Does not, I mean, some of his tape though has got him returning kicks and stuff.
Yep,
so
I was about to say this guy also doubles as a kick returner. He's got a lot of speed on him.
Yeah, and isn't afraid to be physical. I mean, he covers a lot of ground really well. He's, in a lot of his highlights, he's the outside corner, which is exciting, but has great closing speed on the football. There's a lot of things that Jayden Lewis does well.
Yeah, and when you look at this guy and you look at his film, I mean, not only is he afraid to be physical, he's also very agile. I think athletic is a word that you could easily use to describe as this guy, not just as a corner, but maybe as an overall athlete for the Tigers. You see some of his film jumping in the air, getting in weird positions, batting balls down. I mean, this guy likes to play aggressively, and that's what you need out of your corners. You don't need guys that are going to sit back there and just kind of take what the receiver gives them. You need guys that are going to stay on them, be physical. That's kind of the style of corner Auburn has developed over the past half decade or so. Some of these guys may be undersized, but they are going to be scrappy and fight really hard, and that has translated really well to the NFL. So I'm not saying Jayden Lewis is going to come and be a top draft pick whenever he leaves Auburn, but he's got the physical tools and I think the instinct to maybe make that step if he is developed properly.
All right, you and I are wrapping up our week down here in Mobile covering the Senior Bowl, and we got to talk with Eku Leota. We got to talk with Derek Hall, and we also talked to Hugh Freeze. So let's share some of our conversations with those guys in just a moment. But look, we're talking about two defenders that'll be future Auburn Tigers. The defense is such an important part of winning games in the SEC. It's also an important part of making sure you are safe online, and the best defense that you can get is partnering and signing. They're a 5-star. NordVPN, staying safe online is an ever-growing difficulty, and you could be exploited by hackers, and NordVPN allows you to change your IP address, making you harder to track and securing your privacy. And NordVPN, they are giving Auburn Daily listeners and readers a special deal. Just check out the link in the episode description today. We love our friends at NordVPN. All right, let's start with the conversation that we had with Derick Hall. And Derick Hall is living up to, being that late first-round pick. He's winning a lot of one-on-one battles. A lot of people love his length and his finesse moves and the way he's able to leverage his body once contact is made. People are raving about it. I'm seeing scouts tweet about it and draft writers, comment. There's been a lot of good things about what Derick Hall has done so far. It backs up what lives on tape, which is great, which is definitely what you want to see, especially with a guy coming from the SEC. But we were talking to him about it. He's like, hey, it's great that Mel Kiper has me as a first-round pick, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, I've got to still show out. I've got to interview well. I've got to perform in the combine, which is exactly what you would expect Derick Hall to say, right? Like, that's just exactly what you would expect from him, and he's right. But we asked him, Lance, about, okay, who you guys are leaving a massive hole with you and Eku leaving. And, both guys giving Dillon Brooks some love, which shouldn't be a surprise, but I guess it was good to hear, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's good to hear whenever you see a guy like Dillon Brooks who has been in the system for Auburn for heading into his third year, if I'm not mistaken, on the Plains. I mean, you have to start at some point seeing and hearing good things about the former high 4-star defensive lineman prospect there. Yeah, and I hate to say this, but I feel like that response was almost somewhat expected. Like I mentioned, considering this guy has been here for a hot minute, it is now his time because he's been waiting in the wings to step up and to shine. And I wouldn't expect anything less other than them to say positive things about their teammates. But it is interesting, Zach, that Dillon Brooks was the first name out of both of these guys' mouths. What do you think that we should kind of expect out of a guy like Dillon Brooks heading into his third season?
I'm not quite ready to say because so much depends on how much his body develops. I just think he's underweight. And I don't remember if it was Eku or Derick that kind of said, hey, you need to eat more. I think it was Derick that kind of said, hey, yeah, his size. Because I asked, can he play all 3 downs in the SEC? And he's like, well, he needs to gain a little bit more weight. I've been on him about that. Okay, that's good. At least the awareness is there. I certainly think he'd be a pass rusher, put him in on, 3rd and 8 or more. I think that makes a ton of sense. But I don't know. I need to see him bigger for me to say, yeah, let's put him on 1st and 2nd down or 3rd and 3 or shorter. Like, let's wait and see what that looks like. I mean, he's built different than Derick and Eku. I don't have this in front of me, but he may be smaller than Jeff Holland when he was.
He is 6'4", 230.
Okay. Yeah. And so you probably want him a little bit bigger than that. So for all 3 downs, if they just want him to be a pass rusher, then that's a different story. And there's certainly a ton of value in that. But as far as expectations, I think some of it depends on what we see out of Elijah McAllister and Keldrick Falk. Is Keldrick Falk ready day one? He may be. I mean, he's that good. And then, Elijah McAllister, he has 1,000 snaps of SEC play. It's at Vandy, so maybe you should cut those in half. I don't know. But still, there's a lot of experience that he's bringing in. And Eku mentioned Elijah McAllister, which I thought was surprising. I don't know when they would have met because he hasn't been in Auburn. So I thought that was kind of a cool answer from Eku.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, Zach, essentially about Dillon Brooks is what Derick Hall said, which is, look, this guy I think physically needs to round out just a little bit more. I also think it depends on how Auburn wants to use him, like you just said, whether or not they want to use him as just a 3rd down type of guy, a pass rusher, or whether or not they can actually develop him physically a little bit more and bring him into that rotation, maybe outside of just that. And then, like you just mentioned, Elijah McAllister, a guy that we did not even get to bring up to Eku, and he was going through the rotation in. And I think Elijah was the second guy that he mentioned. He's like, oh, and Elijah McAllister, the transfer from Vanderbilt, I'm really intrigued to see what he does as well. And it's really interesting to see former players, like you mentioned, who maybe never got to hang out or discuss things with transfers that are coming in before they graduated and headed out. I mean, and Elijah, you know, we talk about Malik Autry being excited about his size. We're getting a guy that has that experience and that size at 6'6". So curious to see what Auburn's edge and their defensive line rotation looks like this year as opposed to last year, obviously with Leota and Hall leaving. But there are guys I think that we can start to bug a little bit about, Zach, get excited about as the offseason rolls on. But something else I want to point out here, Zach, you know, Derek talked about, you know, needing to perform well in practice, needing to, you know, have solid interviews. I mean, him and Leota, some of the most well-spoken people I've ever met. Very, very, very sure.
And two great human beings as well. And Derek had more people pulling him. Like, there's a lot of people that wanted to talk to Derek. He still gave us a few minutes, which was great one-on-one. But Eku, when he was done, he's like, so how are things going in Auburn? Like, you know, what are you guys up to these days? Like, he genuinely cared. He remembered. We've had both of them on, you know, Locked on Auburn before, and they both remembered. And I don't know, it was just cool to see, like, these are like Auburn men. And, you know, Auburn people love Auburn people, right? And that doesn't stop just with the fans. It continues with the players. And, you know, these guys are going through, I mean, the probably the most stressful period of their life. I mean, you talk about it. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure the transfer portal is pretty stressful for Eku. I mean, he handled it well, but still, like, I'm sure that was not an easy part of easy few weeks for him, or months, I guess, because it took him forever to get here. But the whole, like, job interview. I mean, so the way the Senior Bowl works is every NFL team gets 16 interviews every night. So a lot of these dudes are getting close to 16 chats with professional teams every single night. It's almost like a speed dating thing. And, like, on top of that, you're having to learn a playbook for a game that you're going to play on Saturday because, you know, you want to impress scouts, and you're also having to make sure you're super focused for practice in these one-on-one drills because, you know, if you misstep, you know, it could cost you, you know, 20 spots in the draft, which is money and all the things that go with it. So there's a lot of, I mean, these guys are under a lot of pressure, and just kind of getting to chat with them about that after we get done putting the microphone away. It's like, these guys are people. These guys are fighting their tails off, and they're good people, Lance. And it was nice to spend a lot of extra time with Eku this week.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I was about to say, is I think sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle that these are not just players, these are also people, and I think sometimes people online find themselves in difficult spots in terms of relating to that. And whenever you get to actually speak with these guys, like you mentioned, one-on-one, whenever the camera's not on, whenever the mics aren't on, whenever they're not on the field, you do get to realize that not only are these two guys just humans, but they're also really good ones at that. So it was great to have conversations with Leota and Hall while they're at media days, and, you know, best of luck to them as they continue to work through this process. And I'm excited to see what they both do on Saturday. Yep. They were eating up some tackles during practice at times that you and I got to see, Zach.
Yeah, and they're being asked to do stuff they didn't do a whole lot in practice. I saw both of them in the flats a lot more than we've ever seen them. It's like, you're not supposed to be over there, but at the next level, you have to do all of that stuff, or at least have the ability to. They may not ask you to do it a lot, but you got to have the ability to. And so they're showing that they can move laterally. They weren't asked to do that a ton at Auburn. So cool to see all of them doing that. You can find Lance's work as well as mine at auburndaily.com. And yeah, we've got basketball recap stuff. We'll have more Senior Bowl content as well, recruiting, news stuff. And we still got some things that Hugh Freeze told us this week that we're going to put up throughout the weekend as well. So be sure to check all of that out, auburndaily.com. And this has been the Auburn Daily Show.